Welcome back to my channel. This is VitruvianPhysique, and you know what it is. Welcome to yet another informational video. Today on the topic, lean bulking 101. So, since I have recently come out of my competition season, a lot of you guys have been asking, what are you going to do? Can you do a video, outlining how you're going to transition to, into a caloric surplus, into a bulk? How are you going to go from cutting to growing? Are you doing a lean bulk? Yes. And if so, how are you going to do it? So this video is going to outline, pretty much everything you need to know from the nutritional standpoint, as in regards to calories, macros, protein, everything, how you can execute a proper lean bulk.
Squiggle.
Squiggle.
First step, squiggle.
All right, guys, we have an array of topics in which I have, done the research on for you guys here. Combination of research and my personal experience. All right, guys, getting right off into the good stuff. Number one, simply problems with classic dirty bulking. This is pretty much when you stop giving a crap about your nutrition. Your macros are like 1 billion, your calories are like 2 billion, and you just, you pretty much let yourself go. After a competition, or after a cut, or after a period of being in a caloric deficit. Problem number one is you look like shit. Problem number two is, oh yeah, once again, you look like shit. In your mind, you think you look like a cross between Bane and The Rock, but actually looks like you're sponsored by Krispy Kreme. You're unhealthy, there's problems in regards to your cardiovascular system, you get a fatty liver, it has been linked to acne breakouts. Myself, every time I go from, a cutting season into an off season, just within a few weeks of eating all these like simple sugars, all this junk food, immediately I start breaking out. Your strength, it doesn't improve that much past a certain threshold. Same thing with, your actual body mass in terms of muscle. Me, when I was 195 pounds, I was pretty much the strongest I've ever been. When I went up to 210 pounds, even though I may have gained 15 pounds of body mass, my strength didn't go up that much. So it's almost like, is it worth it? Probably not. And the last thing is, guys, it's gonna be so much harder to diet, when you do decide to do it again. Let's be honest, we're not gonna be doing this for the rest of our lives. At least I really hope not. So when you do decide to cut again, it's much easier if you cut down from, let's say, 15, 16% body fat, and your cut can be a little bit, easier on yourself, and you can do it over the course of 3 to 4 months, as opposed to, if you're like 215 pounds and like 25% body fat, congratulations, your cut is gonna last 8 months and it's pretty much gonna drive you insane. Overall, guys, dirty bulking is pretty much a one-way ticket to dad bod, so. All right, guys, next up, why actually do a lean bulk? Well, the whole point of a lean bulk is that we are going to be putting on, muscle. We're going to be putting on strength, but it's to minimize or mitigate fat loss. You will never, as a natural bodybuilder, be able to put on just lean body mass, unless you're maybe in your first, 1 to 2 years of training and you're in that noob gain phase in which, it rains like puppies in sunshine and you do amazing magical things, which, the rest of us who've been training for a while, it's pretty much physiologically impossible and you can't be done. So you're gonna put on some, body fat. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there may think like, well, I don't wanna do that. I wanna put on lean muscle mass, or I wanna lose body fat. And it can't really be done. You might end up trying to do two things and doing them both poorly as opposed to doing one well. In fact, to quote someone a lot smarter than me, and I've talked about him before, Lyle McDonald, he actually said in one of his articles, keeping calories too low year-round hurts improvements in both mass and strength gains. And the simple fact is, the body needs not only an appropriate training stimulus, but also sufficient building blocks. We're talking protein, amino acids, and sufficient energy, dietary energy, calories, for maximal improvements. Staying excessively lean, which means either doing tons of cardio, restricting calories, or both, isn't consistent with the goal of trying to get stronger or more muscular for the most part. All right, guys, so getting right into it, how do we go about, deciding what we're gonna do with a lean bulk? So, number one is simply calories. You're gonna have to be in a caloric surplus, which means that you take your caloric maintenance level, which you can figure out through, using multiple, there's equations, online calculators, formulas, like, the popular Harris-Benedict equation, whatever you wanna use, or better yet, through trial and error, through experience. You probably know your body better than anybody out there, especially some random guy on YouTube. Whatever your maintenance calories are, add a certain surplus on top of that in order to be putting on mass. Now, how much of a caloric surplus we're going to be using, that is the key to gaining mass, and how fast we're going to gain mass, and how lean, what proportion of lean mass we're going to be gaining. So when it comes to a caloric surplus, I usually say stick to around 300 to 400 for lean bulking. If you want to get a little bit faster, you want to put on mass and you're okay with, putting on potentially a little bit more fat, you can increase this to like 500, maybe 600 and 700 and beyond. But at that point, I do warn you, you are probably, more likely to put on a little bit of fat. Now this brings me over to the next topic, which is specifically more does not necessarily mean better. So when you are dieting, the bigger caloric deficit you are in, the faster you're gonna lose weight. So if you're in a caloric deficit of, negative 500 and you bump it up to negative 1000, you're gonna feel like shit for starters, but you're also probably going to lose weight, a considerable amount faster. That is the case here as well, because you will, the bigger caloric surplus you're gonna have, the more weight and the faster weight you're going to gain. But I said weight, not necessarily muscle. Guys, physiologically, your body just simply cannot synthesize muscle that fast. It doesn't happen. It doesn't do this. Just looking at it from a logical standpoint, what takes longer? The energy-consuming, complicated, time-consuming process of combining amino acids into proteins and then into muscle fibers, or, the breakdown of macronutrients, which, for lack of a better word, is just taking stuff and burning it up. Think of it this way, what takes longer, playing a full 3-hour game of Monopoly where you set up the perfect strategy, or the 1.2 seconds it takes your douchebag friend who's losing to do this?
Fuck! You're kidding!
Judge. Fuck! So, the next thing I want to mention is this concept of genetic potential, which as we all know, or hopefully we all know, your body simply is not going to put on muscle forever. It's going to slow down, right? Your gains, if you track muscle versus time, in the beginning you're going to put on gains fast, but then kind of, after a while, after like, 5, 10, whatever years, and I'm pretty much right here, it's going to slow down. Can you still put on muscle? Yes, but you're not going to put on as much. So this is problematic because people who have been training for a while, this definitely applies to people who have been training, for a couple years and more. You may not be getting as many gains as you did in the beginning, and you may think that one of the reasons behind this is because you are simply not eating enough. We've all seen that Rich Piana video where it's like, are you not getting bigger?
How do you get big? Well, everybody knows the answer. Eat more.
Do whatever it takes, like.
Eat more. Eat more. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You gotta eat whatever it takes, you gotta do it. I can eat 12 times a day.
I can eat 17,000 meals per day. I'm eating right now, you just can't see it. Yeah, so we may think that we need to keep on eating in order to get, in order to break this plateau, but it's not a plateau, it's not like a fat loss plateau where it's like, you can diet harder as long as you, increase the caloric deficit. Once you're here, there's nothing you can do about it unless you either A, go on steroids, or B, go back in time and tell your mom to do it with another guy so you can get better muscle building genetics and your genetic potential instead of being here is like up here somewhere. It doesn't work that way. So the problem is a lot of people will overeat trying to break through this, and instead of gaining like muscle, they'll just gain fat. You may put on, like I've done this in myself in the past, guys. I'm not trying to sound like some genius who's figured this out. This took me like a long time to put all this stuff together. In the past, I've been as heavy as 195 pounds and I felt good, I felt strong. I was probably at my best, off-season form, off-season shape, off-season strength. And then I wanted to keep on going because, do whatever it takes. And I got up to like 210, 212 pounds because I kept on trying to break through this, but it didn't happen. Out of those additional 15 pounds that I gained, legit maybe 1 to 2 pounds of it was actually muscle. The other, 12, 13, 14 pounds was fat, which is ridiculous because I tried to do it too quickly. Had I just slowed it down, I would have probably put on less weight overall, maybe like an extra 5 pounds, but maybe it would have been a 50-50 ratio of muscle to fat, which I'm okay with, but not like a 1 to 14 ratio. That's not good. So if you have a genetic potential, which we all do, the whole point of this is you're gonna have to take it a little bit slower, and you can't just break through it with more food. It doesn't work that way. So protein, guys, this is one thing that's, it's pretty damn simple. So when you are dieting, the ideal amount of protein intake is going to be a little bit higher than when you are bulking. The reason we do this is because when you are dieting and your body's in a caloric deficit, it's not getting enough energy. It's not getting enough carbohydrates, it's not getting enough fat. Your body is a lot more prone to taking ingested or potentially even stored protein, aka muscles, and metabolizing it, burning it up for actual energy. So we have to almost like overcompensate for this by taking in a little bit more protein. So usually when you're cutting anywhere from 1.0, in my opinion, to, I don't know, like 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight will be sufficient, just a little bit more. However, when you are bulking, this isn't required because your body is no longer at risk of, using precious stored or ingested protein as an energy source. It's not going to burn it up because it's getting plenty of calories in the form of carbohydrates and fat because you're in a caloric surplus. So you don't need as much. Do you still need a medium amount? Yes, just for basic muscle protein synthesis. And that number is about 0.8 to 1.0 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're cutting, go for that. If you're bulking, this should be more than enough. Me being at like 185-ish pounds right now, I could easily get 170 grams of protein, and that's more than enough. Okay, next up, fat. So similar to protein, there's like a magic number for cutting and a magic number for bulking. And that number is, so when you are cutting, the magic number of fat is anywhere from 15 to 25% of your calories. So, 50, again, guys, fat, protein, and carbohydrates are macronutrients, but they can be metabolized, and they are metabolized into calories. 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of carbs equals 4 calories. 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. Again, it's all broken down.
I thought it was 7.
What is?
Fat.
No, it's 9. Either way, guys, so yeah, you want 15 to 25% of your calories coming from fat when you are cutting. When you are bulking, again, we can get a little bit more liberal. So we're gonna go with 20 to 30% of your calories coming from fat. However, in my opinion, I don't wanna do this. I think that's a little bit too hot. I personally advocate, in my case, my experience, I say max out at 25% coming from fat. There's a couple of reasons for this, but in my opinion, the number, one of the most basic is simply the fact that fat is not your body's primary source of energy. Now, I'm going to throw up on the screen right now. This is a great way to visualize the hierarchy of energy sources in your body. And number one is simply carbohydrates in the form of glycogen, in the form of ingested glucose. This can be readily, quickly used as energy for your body. Fat is, it's like number 2 or number like 3 on the list. So if you're going to be ingesting calories, I would say take the fat a little bit lower and put more of those available calories, from whatever you are intaking, put that into carbohydrates. Another reason for why I advocate going higher carb, lower fat in terms of your lean bulk is because muscle fibers. So your body has 2 different kinds of muscle fibers, all situated all throughout its body. It's got slow and fast twitch muscle fibers, and as the name kind of implies, fast twitch muscle fibers are a lot more useful for exercise, which is like very intense and very short bursts of exercise. For example, sprinting for like 100 meters, or doing a very heavy, very intense set of 6 on the squat, or on the deadlift, something which is going to be very difficult and physically taxing for a short period of time. Then we have slow twitch muscle fibers, which are better for endurance training. They're better for cardio. They're better for 20 to 30 minutes of jogging or Stairmaster or something. That's when you use slow twitch muscle fibers. You guys may be wondering, okay, fine, that makes sense, but what does that have to do with diet, nutrition, and lean bulking? These muscle fibers not only differ in terms of what they do, but they differ in terms of their primary energy sources. So slow twitch muscle fibers actually primarily metabolize and burn through triglycerides, free fatty acids, so fat, situated throughout the human body. Whereas fast twitch muscle fibers, which we are going to be using a lot of because we are lean bulking, we are trying to get bigger, we are trying to get stronger, we are trying to hit PRs, as much as we can, hence progressive overload. Fast twitch muscle fibers actually primarily rely on carbohydrates, glycogen, and ATP, which I'm not going to get into, but that's like a very quick, easy, fast source of energy situated all throughout your body. But there's very little of it, so you go through that in like 10 seconds. And then afterwards, you're going to be using primarily glycogen. So once again, if we were going to be training for bulk, for strength, for progressive overload, we're going to be using a lot more fast twitch muscle fibers. Wouldn't it be better to, give them the energy source they need, aka glycogen, aka carbohydrates? By the way, this is why cardio, slow twitch muscle fiber activity, exercise, is so important and so, beneficial when you are dieting, because it uses those fatty acids, it burns through fat, which is exactly what we want. But let's be honest, we're in a caloric surplus, we are bulking. Like I said, burning fat, probably not gonna happen. At this point, we're just trying to mitigate the amount of fat we do gain. Okay, next up. Now this one is in red for a reason, because this is probably one of the most interesting and important aspects of the entire video. So, de novo lipogenesis. This is something which occurs in your body, and what it pretty much means, it's in Latin or Greek or something, but translated, it means new form of lipo, which is a fancy way of, the scientific terminology for fat. So pretty much new way of generating or genesizing generating fat. And the reason it's able to do this is through taking protein, but for this video, we're mostly focusing on carbohydrates and converting that into fat. So guys, the way that your body stores fat is it eats, dietary fat, breaks it down, chops it up into like little puzzle pieces. You know how we have protein has amino acids, which are puzzle pieces? Fat has it too. They're called, just free fatty acids. And like I said, triglycerides is an example of one. And it sends this off to fat cells situated all throughout your body, which are again, are distributed differently depending on your genetics, which I mentioned in this video here. And it's gonna go to the fat cells, which are like balloons, and it inflates them, and that's how you get fat. It's not like you ingest fat cells. No, you ingest what goes into the fat cells, these little building blocks. And when you eat dietary fat, it's very easy because you're eating fat, your body simply chops it up, sends it off to the fat cells, you gain fat, no problem. Now, it can't do this with carbohydrates and, obviously protein, but again, focusing on carbohydrates in this video because it's two different things. The puzzle pieces, they don't match, right? It's the wrong stuff that goes into the fat cells. For it to ingest carbohydrates, first it has to transfer and convert them into fatty acids, then send them off to the fat cells. And it does this using de novo lipogenesis. Now, here's what gets kind of interesting because your body, can it do this? Yes. Will it do this? Yes. But it doesn't do this that much, and it doesn't do this, very well. It's not like, it doesn't do this nearly as much as if you were to get the exact same amount of calories from fat or carbohydrates. From fat, it's very easy. It's just like it's a one-way street, it's one highway. Let's say fat is just one subway. Well, this is like it has to get off the subway and take an extension, go another subway. And that's not very efficient, doesn't do this very well. In fact, there was actually a study done, and they overfed them like crazy. In fact, they gave them about 500 grams of carbohydrates. And they found that after that crazy high carbohydrate meal, these individuals only actually synthesized through de novo lipogenesis 4 to 5 grams of fat, which is ridiculous because it's pretty much saying that after all of that carbohydrates that they ingested, the actual amount of fat that was created wasn't that much. And what this could actually lead us to is this interesting thing, this interesting phenomenon which I've been seeing, over the last couple months or years with vegans. I have seen so many vegan YouTubers and vegan people on social media claim that they are able to eat, exuberant amount of carbohydrates, exuberant amount of calories, significant caloric surpluses, yet they are still able to stay lean. Like that banana chick, the one that claims she eats 3,000 calories or something, that's ridiculous because, for a girl her size, unless her activity level is extremely high, which again, is possible. I mean, I don't know her situation, but eating 3,000 calories for a woman her size, she'd probably be in a significant caloric surplus. You'd expect her to gain weight, yet she stays fairly lean. So I was always thinking that maybe this is one of the reasons why, because if you are a vegan, you are naturally going to eat very high carbohydrate, very low fat, dietary fat, diets, because think of it, most high fat foods aside from avocados, that's the only one I could think of that's natural and high in fat, maybe nuts as well. Everything else like mayonnaise, like all these fatty cheeses, bacon, like butter, all this stuff, like burgers, right? It's all it's all animal products. When they cut it out, in doing so, they just inadvertently end up eating diets which are a lot lower in fat. So it's not uncommon for me to hear about guys around my size to be eating diets which are in the lean bulking season to be 500 grams of carbohydrates and 30 to 40 grams of fat, because they simply can't get that much fat even if they tried, and yet they stay very lean. So maybe this is one of the reasons why. Again, this is kind of a theory, just something which I have noticed myself. Okay, so with carbohydrates, this is the final macronutrient. This one's not as difficult to calculate because, if you've already figured out your protein, you've already figured out your fat, which we've done so here, all of your, through the process of elimination, all of your remaining calories are simply going to go into carbohydrates, which is probably a lot. I did an example calculation of this, the person my size, and it came out to we're talking 450, 500 grams of carbohydrates or over, which is over 50% of my calories coming from carbohydrates, assuming that I am eating, an adequate amount of protein and assuming I'm keeping my fat a little bit low. The kind of carbohydrates you eat, again, it's up to you if you follow the principles of if it fits your macros. It could be sugar, it could be Coca-Cola, or it could be healthy, oatmeal and all that stuff. But I do advocate trying to stay a little bit clean, simply because lower glycemic index carbohydrates are going to give you less that sugar rush and crash You're gonna get good sustainable energy for your workouts, you know, throughout your entire day. Overall, in terms of micronutrients, in terms of vitamins, in terms of minerals, it's definitely better for you from a health standpoint. Now, the last thing I want to mention in terms of carbohydrates is that I may make it sound like it's the holy grail, like holy shit, guys. You can eat like 1,000 grams of carbs and we're not gonna get fat. That's it, everybody. Like, we have to scream this at the top of our lungs off the rooftops. No, not necessarily. Lyle McDonald actually asked this once, and I found, you know, it was like a forum post or an article he had, and it pretty much talked that this de novo lipogenesis, although it's not that common, if you lower your fat intake very low, we are talking less than 10% of your caloric intake, then yes, de novo lipogenesis will actually be ramped up. In addition, if you're getting so many calories from your carbohydrates, what actually ends up happening is your body, all of the fat it takes in, even though it's very little, it's going to use 100% of that for fat storage. So can carbohydrates make you fat directly by being converted into fatty acids and then going into your fat cells? No, but can they make you fat indirectly if you have so many of them that your body uses all of that for, you know, energy and for glycogen replenishment to the point where it takes 100% of your fat and converts it into fat cells, even though you may be ingesting very little fat? Yes. So I do think that if you have a high carb, low fat diet, it will probably be more difficult for you to get, you know, overweight and for you to go this, you know, dirty bulking route, as opposed to if you were doing an even split between carbohydrates and fat. But that doesn't mean it's the holy grail. That doesn't mean that you can eat like a bajillion carbohydrates and stay completely shredded. You're still gonna gain fat. I just think it's not gonna be as bad and it's not gonna be as fast. All right, guys, and the final point, exceptions, because do I think all of this is for everyone? No. In fact, there are 4 rules I think you guys should satisfy if you want to consider taking the lean bulking route, and we're gonna see them right over here.
Whoa.
Welcome to the requirements, VitruvianPhysique's requirements to consider for lean bulking. If you satisfy all of these 4 requirements, you should definitely consider a lean bulk. I know I will this off season. So number 1, at or under 15 to 16% body fat. If you are, you know, a little bit overweight and you are like, not overweight, but you're not like lean by any means. So let's say you're 20% body fat to the point where your abs, they're pretty much gone. Even under the perfect half natty lighting, you have nothing there. Don't lean bulk, don't dirty bulk. You should probably consider doing a cut. In fact, lean bulking is probably a great option for people who are sitting somewhere in that, you know, 13, 14, 12, 15% body fat range, because again, fat gain is gonna happen. Can you minimize this? Yes. So definitely, you know, you want to be at a little bit of a lean starting point. And if you're not, maybe you should consider a little mini cut before you jump into a lean bulk. Number 2, lifting for at least over 2 years. I think that lean bulking is great for a person such as myself, who may be somewhat approaching their genetic limitation, or maybe a person who's just been doing this for a while and, you know, they've already gone through that noob gain phase. But if you are still in that noob gain phase, your body's capable of doing so much because any training stimulus it gets is so amazing that I say, you know what, go for it. Like, give your body the nutrients, more than enough nutrients, to actually get like that crazy 1 year, that first year of lifting where you do ungodly things that, like, people like myself who've been lifting for a while, it's nowhere near plausible for us anymore. You can put on like 20 to 30 pounds of muscle. Give it the nutrients it requires. I'm not saying go full out dirty bulk, but, you know, don't try to do it super clean and super slow at like, you know, like a 200 calorie surplus. No, like, give it a little bit more than that. Next up, time. This is a slow process. Just like I said up here, you know, for noob guys, you can put on a lot of muscle fast. Lean bulking is kind of a slower process. Don't do this if you're gonna be doing like a mini bulk. If you are gonna be cutting again in 4 months, you're not gonna do anything. This lean bulk, it's a very slow, gradual process. We're gonna be putting on fat very slowly, which is why we put on so little fat. But in addition, we put on muscle and strength kind of slowly as well. So I say at least 6+ months. If you were gonna be doing another cut in 3 months, you don't really have much time for a lean bulk. But then again, should you go in a dirty bulk either? I don't know. At this point, don't bulk at all if you're going to be doing it for under 6 months. It's a long-term process. And number 4, the most important and final requirement for people who are considering a lean bulk. This is for people who do not want to look like shit. Okay, that's it, guys. I apologize that this video went very long. There's a lot of sciencey numbers, mathematical, quantitative stuff. But that is it. This is what I'm going to be incorporating into my nutrition plan for the, you know, at least the next 6, 8, 12, whatever months. I haven't decided how long I'm going to be doing it, but this is the best way, at least based on my experience, based on my knowledge, and I hope that you can take something from here, apply it to yourselves, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave it a like, leave it a comment, leave it a whatever. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you in the next video.